What happens when ancient religious tenets find themselves in conflict with modern science? Let's find out right now on the Atheist Forum. You are about to enter the no superstition zone of rational thinking and intellectual curiosity here on the Atheist Forum. Standing by for your questions or comments at 727-441-3000, where you can talk to a real live atheist here on Tan Talk 1340. Quick news update. The price is wrong. Turns out that Tom Price, Health and Human Service Secretary, resigned after racking up about $400,000 in travel bills for chartered flights and undermining Trump's promise to drain the swamp. Trump fired him, saying, "I'm not happy, okay?" Told reporters as he about to head to his New Jersey golf club for the weekend at a cost to taxpayers of about $3 million. Kidding me. Anyway, Ed Golly with you on the Atheist Forum. I'm joined by Judy Adkins and the redoubtable Joe of the House of Reinhardt. We're going to be talking today with Brandon Haught, and he's going to talk to us about some really interesting issues regarding, about education and funding for education and the charter school issues.
And the religious freedom.
Yes.
Expression.
One other tidbit I wanted to mention, though, the Pope Francis earlier this week acknowledged the Catholic Church was a bit late in realizing the damage done by priests who rape and molest children. Given that it took them only 350 years to agree that the Earth is not the center of the solar system and the universe, I'd say they were a couple of centuries ahead of schedule, wouldn't you? You got to be kidding me. All right, Brandon Haught, Pete, is he on the line with us? Great, ready to go, Brandon.
I'm right here.
Thank you. Good to hear from you, and thanks for calling in and being part of the Atheist Forum. You obtained your teacher certification in 2014, hired at a high school in Central Florida where you taught biology, and you're currently teaching environmental science, which means that among the topics you cover are evolution and climate change. Brandon's
as you mentioned, my name is Brandon Haught.
Would I say Haught? Sorry.
My students get that messed up all the time, and so I tell them the easiest way to remember that, because my name is spelled H-A-U-G-H-T. I just simply say, Haught taught the class, and then they get it from there on out. And if they don't, they just say, "Hey, Mr. H," and you know what? I respond to that, too.
Well, we promoted you last week. I got it straight, but it's just when I look at it, that's what I see, Haught. But I'll say Haught. Okay. Anyway, you're a founding board member and volunteer communications director for the nonprofit Florida Citizens for Science, which is a
Correct.
Science education advocacy organization where you become deeply involved in a major controversy, 2008, over the teaching of evolution in Florida schools.
Right.
From that experience sprang the idea for your first book, Going Ape, which I thought was a biography of Governor Rick Scott, but maybe not. I probably should read it or at least look at the cover or something like that.
Well, no, he came on scene too late to make it into my book.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, we're very anxious to talk to you. Judy, I know you've got some things you want to get right into with Brandon.
Yeah, I do. First of all, thank you very much for being here with us. And I know that you're very concerned about the religious expression in public schools and the effect that's going to have on science education.
Yeah, that's right. Just this past Florida state legislative session, they passed a couple of bills that could affect science education here in Florida. And I admit, not just science education, but other subjects as well. But since we are Florida Citizens for Science, we focus primarily on the science, of course. One of those, which you just brought up, was the Religious Expression in Schools law. Yes, it is now a law. The governor has signed it into law. Our state legislature near unanimously passed this, both the House and the Senate. It met with so little resistance. I did actually go to Tallahassee to talk against this bill during one of the hearings, and unfortunately, I had no effect. But the bottom line is that it gives all school personnel. I mean, it clearly says that in the law. All school personnel. That could be teachers, that could be administrators. To right to freely express, their religious views. And another separate part of the same law also says that students cannot be discriminated against for expressing their religious views on their school work. And so, those two things can be kind of concerning when we talk about science education, because a lot of people have religious views concerning, let's say, the teaching of evolution, especially. So we still have to wait to see how this is going to play out. It could take a long time before we start seeing any type of, questionable things come out. That's why we need you. That's why we need your listeners. That's why we need everybody, to keep a very close eye on what's going on in your children's schools. Is there a teacher who's going to go ahead and start saying, you know what, this evolution thing is a bunch of bunk. Here's what I think based on my religious opinion. Does this law allow them to do that? And so that's something we still need to kind of suss out. And then the same thing with a student. A student can say on a question about evolution, well, you know what, I don't believe in this evolution thing. I'm going to say something else. If a teacher marks them wrong,
Sure.
Is that going to cause a stir?
Question. Brandon, what do you think is the possibility or likelihood that the sheer volume of people making suggestions or complaints would just about bring the entire education process to a halt?
I doubt that will come to pass. That's kind of a sky is falling kind of look at what could happen with this. I kind of doubt that will happen. I think it's going to be more of just some isolated incident here and isolated incident there. I think that there is definitely professionalism. I, as a teacher, would hope that there is definitely professionalism in the teaching profession across our state. That this shouldn't, pop up and become a statewide issue. I think it's going to be more localized.
Well, I think Joe might be referring to the objection to books that they also passed.
Well, then between the two,
yeah.
The objections are infinite possibilities.
So I believe what you're referring to is a separate law
Right.
that was also passed during the same legislative session,
Yes,
dealing
correct.
with how we can protest against instructional materials, primarily the textbooks that are used in our schools. Previously, it was primarily parents. If you had a child in the school system, you could come forward and lodge a complaint about certain, what you think is wrong with what's in the textbooks in your child's classroom. This law has now opened it up to where any citizen, and I mean any Florida citizen, can now come forward and trigger a process by which now the school board has to take your complaint very seriously. They actually have to appoint a hearing officer to run an actual hearing on your complaint, and then that complaint then, takes on a life of its own. I mean, seriously, it has that potential. And then the hearing officer makes a recommendation to the school board, but it's still ultimately up to that school board to make the final decision as to whether to make any changes to those textbooks, such as to remove the textbook or replace it or to modify it in some way.
Do you have a list of suggestion questions or complaints that people of our persuasion might lodge, either in the first law or the second instance that you cited?
Well, I think that my position and that of my organization, Florida Citizens for Science, is primarily defensive, because our Florida state standards that we fought very hard for back in 2008 do explicitly and clearly mention evolution, and also climate change is in there. And so we're just fine with what's in there. It's those folks who don't like evolution, who don't like climate change, who are now going to come forward and complain about what's in the textbooks. And we know it's going to happen because some people have already done so to some degree. And so to answer your question, no, I don't have anything for us to go forward and complain about. I think we have it pretty good. The problem is defending against those who think the opposite of us.
But I know you have some suggestions on your website, your blog specifically, concerning actions that people can take. I don't know if you want to go over just a few of those now and let people who are listening know what they can do as a
what happens here is that I have had quite a few people, when I make a blog post and then I post it on social media, and I just help people find out about our organization through some of the media attention that we've gotten. And they're like, oh, I I'm very concerned about this issue, but I don't know what to do. And so I actually did say, okay, well, there's a whole list of things that you can possibly do depending on how much time you have, how much energy and effort that you have to put into this. The very basic level is to make sure that you yourself are you're informed about what's going on. Read up on all this stuff that's going on. Make yourself familiar with what these laws are. Read through the Florida Citizens for Science website and get up to speed on the issues, and make sure that you yourself know what you're talking about. Another thing you can do is, of course, spread the word, because now you know about it, and that's awesome. But does anyone else? And so, talk to your friends about it, talk to your family, where it's okay to do so, talk to your coworkers and so on. Spread it on social media. Make sure that other people are aware of what's going on. And those kind of things are very, very basic level. Just, here's something that you can do, even if you don't have a whole lot of time and effort to put into this. Just be familiar and then spread the word to other people. And of course, there are other things you can do. You can definitely monitor your local school board, find out what their agenda is for the next meeting, and just kind of monitor those things. That doesn't mean that you have to physically attend each and every meeting. Just are you aware of what's going on in your own home school district?
Question. To what extent does the Department of Education set the curriculum for teaching science education in the public schools?
Now, at the state level, they have what's called the Florida State Science Standards, in which they say, okay, across the entire state of Florida, we expect that in all of our biology classrooms, that these certain topics and these certain things about these topics are to be taught. And so evolution is, unfortunately, one of those things. We expect that when you're teaching biology, that you're going to teach about evolution, and you're going to teach about these specific things about evolution. But as far as how to teach them, that is up to the local school district. Most school districts, not all of them, but most school districts have what's called a curriculum map, in which they say, okay, during these first 2 weeks of school, you're going to be teaching this general topic. During these 3 weeks of school, you're going to be teaching this general topic. And then finally, it's up to you, the individual teacher, to take that curriculum map, to take those standards, and then create your own lesson to make sure that you address all those things. So the state is not dictating how to teach something. It's just saying you need to teach these topics. And then you, the teacher, say, okay, this is how I want to teach those topics.
But what about the federal Department of Education? How are they mixed up in this?
Well, not so much, at least not in our Florida state science standards. I'm not really too familiar with how they play a role in all this, because those state standards are created by us, the state.
Okay.
Like I said, I had a somewhat of a role in that back in 2008, and so I know that it wasn't really the federal government telling us what to teach. It was us, the state of Florida, determining what we want to teach.
All right. The next thing I'd like to ask, or do you guys want to know something?
Right.
I have one other thing going back to the religious freedom, religious expression.
Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Equal Access Act.
Somewhat.
Well, yeah, me generally, and that's the act that the feds passed that says that students can't be denied, religious students can't be denied access to school property, to have clubs and things if they allow other.
Yep, definitely know that.
Yeah. It specifically states in there that teachers cannot be involved in the leadership of those groups. Now that seems quite in contrast with this new law, the Religious Freedom Expression Act in Florida, which says that teachers can be involved with the students in spreading religion. And I'm just wondering, is there a conflict there? How does this resolve itself?
When this bill, before it became law, when this bill was passing its way through the legislature, that question was brought up a little bit. It was like, okay, hey, Senator, hey, Representative, don't you realize that, students already have religious liberties in schools, that they cannot be discriminated against and so on, as long as they're not disrupting the school day? And those same senators, the those same representatives are like, oh, we just want to make sure that we really solidify that, they claimed that there were cases of, let's say, a school saying that, hey, that student can't wear a cross necklace or something,
Right.
which I'm actually kind of doubtful of. But in any case, they're claiming that, certain Christians are being discriminated against in these things, and that's what they use as support for their law. But I just, you know what, you're right. I think this law is going way too far.
Yeah, it really concerns me about teachers involved in spreading their religion. And then I have one other quick question about Marion County. I know there's something on your blog about they are going to review and approve textbooks on their own. And I'm wondering how complicated is that going to make issues if every county decides that they're going to approve their own textbooks? And how does that fit in with the state regulations?
Oh, my gosh. I was surprised to see that myself. And so that was something I rushed to write about and make people aware of. Here in Florida, the way that textbooks are typically approved, at the local school district level, is it starts at the state level, in which the Florida Department of Education says, okay, let's go ahead and send out a bid request to all the textbook publishers. And then once those textbook publishers submit their bid, okay, we have these textbooks, here's our price for our textbooks and so on. Then the Department of Education then pulls together a small little committee, it's like only 3 people, to go ahead and review all these materials and determine, okay, this set of textbooks is really, really good. It matches the Florida State Science Standard. We recommend that this be approved for use in our state. And so once it goes through that process, and then it gets officially approved by, I'm very sorry, don't hold me to this, but I think it's like the Commissioner of Education or something like that. But anyway, an official actually blesses it and says, okay, yes, this right here is the list that we have looked at, that this is the best textbooks for use in Florida. And then your local school district then takes a look at that list and says, okay, we'll pick this one and this one. And then they usually put it up there at teachers. Which one do you want to use in your classroom? And then they vote on it, stuff like that. So that's typically the process that's been going on for several years. But now there is a law that was passed a couple of years ago that said that local school districts can totally bypass the state process and do it all by themselves. But you know what? That is a really huge financial burden on those school districts to go through that process on their own. And it takes so much time and so much effort. And that's why we haven't seen a school district do that up to this point. And so now we have Marion County that announced that, yeah, they're going to do that process now. And so that's what they're doing, is they're assembling their own committees, they're doing their own review work. And so that is something that we really need to keep a close eye on. And so if any of your listeners are in Marion County, we need you, and I mean that seriously. We need you to be a part of the process if you can, or at the absolute minimum to at least monitor the process and report any hijinks that might ensue.
I would think the counties would want to avoid making up their own book lists for the simple reason that they could avoid a great deal of controversy by doing that, and there's nothing that a politician enjoys less than controversy in most cases.
Yep. I completely agree with you. And so what I would love to happen, I so wish, I'm a teacher, and so, yes, I'm very, very busy, not just with my teaching and lesson planning, but I'm also, very involved in my school. I help with our school SGA, homecoming prom. I'm involved in all of that, so I have very limited free time to do my own research. And so I'm putting out a call for any of your listeners that are in Marion County. I want to know where this came from. I want to know who came forward to the Marion County School Board and said, hey, let's do our own thing. I would love to know where this came from, who came up with the idea to do it on their own. And so I'm asking for you to put it out to your listeners. If anybody has the time to go and dig into the school board meeting minutes and go research and find out where did this come from, that would be valuable information.
I would have to think that Marion County is also overwhelmingly probably Christian, which makes it much easier for the school board since the vast majority of their constituents already agree with whatever it is they want to come up with.
As I was doing my own research into this, just trying to formulate what was going on. If you take a look at their county seal, that graphic that says, "Hey, this is Marion County." Just a couple of years ago, they changed their seal, and now it says on it, big, bold, and prominent, "In God We Trust." They made a big deal out of that a couple of years ago to change their county seal. So, yeah, I think you're right.
Well, if you've just recently joined us, you're listening to the Atheist Forum here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. 441-3000 will allow you to come in and talk to us and our guest, Brandon Haught. Nice.
There you go.
Brandon Haught.
Rhymes with taught.
He's the Volunteer Communications Director for Florida Citizens for Science. This is the voice of atheism in Florida. Brandon, I want to say two words that I presume will stand the hair on your back up, or run chills up your spine. Betsy DeVos. Her opposition to public education is well documented, and her determination to use the taxpayer funds for private, including parochial schools, is pretty unacceptable. An opinion piece published in the New York Times back in December, the author stated that at a 2001 gathering of conservative Christian philanthropists, DeVos singled out education reform as a way to, quote, advance God's kingdom, unquote. In an interview, she and her husband, Richard DeVos Jr., said that school choice would lead to, quote, great kingdom gain, unquote. As I listened to her stammer and stumble through her pronouncements, it seems to me that what she's really trying to avoid saying directly is that she wants to completely dismantle the public school system in this entire nation, turn it over to religion, and have it all funded by the taxpayers. Tell us your thoughts on that, please.
Well, keep in mind that I keep the vast majority of my focus on our state, the state of Florida. So I am familiar, of course I'm familiar with Ms. DeVos, and I don't know, but I don't get down into the weeds as to what she's doing and how she's doing it. But I do know that this whole movement of school choice, sending what is essentially taxpayer dollars into voucher schools, that she is all for that. And I can tell you that here in Florida, as well as other states, that a lot of that voucher money goes to religious schools. And in those religious schools, quite a few of them are using religious textbooks. Have you heard of Abeka?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Pensacola.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is based in Pensacola. And that's the Abeka textbooks. They send out, they have this whole company based on very religious-themed textbooks. And I want you to think.
They don't even allow dancing at their school.
Exactly.
That's how reactionary and conservative.
Evil, that's evil.
Yes.
You know why Baptists never make love standing up? They're afraid someone will see them and think they're dancing.
And as I understand it, they actually say in these textbooks, if the science is in conflict with the Bible, just ignore the science. The Bible is always right.
That's essentially it. Yes, that's essentially it. And so your taxpayer dollars, in a roundabout way, are going to these religious schools that are using Abeka textbooks here in Florida.
And Bob Jones University textbooks.
That's right, Bob Jones University. You got it. Those two are the main companies that produce these textbooks. Yep.
We want to take just a moment to tell you a little bit about Atheists of Florida. We're going to take a short break and come back with Brandon after the break and talk some more about the
we can get
issue
into the
of
lawsuits after this.
The lawsuits and climate change.
Yeah.
We'll be back in just a moment. Atheists of Florida is a nonprofit membership organization founded in 1992. For over 25 years, Atheists of Florida has brought atheists together to address state-church separation issues, provide legal assistance in cases of religious discrimination in employment or educational institutions, help atheists meet others who want to live their lives free of religion, and produce the Atheist Forum. For membership information, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com, where you'll find our newsletters, annual reports, statement of purpose, and information about meetings and events. That's atheistofflorida.com.
Tampa Bay Talk, entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
All right. Coming up the 20th of this month, there will be the Free Flow Conference in Orlando, Florida. And Brandon, you'll be one of the speakers there. On the line with us, Jocelyn and David Williamson, I think. Are both of them there? Talk to me,
Hello
David.
there.
Hey, David.
Yes.
And Jocelyn. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome back. Good to hear from you again.
Thank you. We're so glad to be back.
Thank you.
So the conference is coming up. Brandon will be one of the speakers, along with a lot of other great speakers, October 20 to 22nd in Orlando. How can a listener get more information if they'd like to go to that conference?
Well, we're really excited because Brandon is going to be speaking, and actually he's speaking on Saturday afternoon of the conference. In addition, to him being an activist and an author and a high school teacher, he is actually one hell of a speaker. He was part of our Darwin Day event locally, and he completely blew us away with his stage presence. He's quite the entertainer. Also joining Brandon, we actually have Bertha Vasquez, who's a middle school science teacher from South Florida. She's the director of the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science, which is a program of the Richard Dawkins Foundation and the Center for Inquiry. And she works hard to ensure students get the facts in science education instead of fairy tales. So from evolution to climate change, as you guys have been talking about, there is this hard press from the religious right to not just push mythology into the classroom, but to dismantle our public education. We also have, Eugenie Scott, Dr. Eugenie Scott as well coming to speak. And so if you want to learn more, you can go to freeflow.org. But I think David wanted to say a little bit more about the conference as well.
Yeah, real briefly, there's actually a significant science focus this year. So much we've asked Dr. Daniel Batchelder, who I hope you'll have on the show at some point. We'll get you his contact information. He's our trivia host, and he's the Florida Institute of Technology's department head for physics and space science. Another fantastic speaker we know the audience will love. His recent book is called Astronomy Saves the World, and his, along with Brandon's, will be available for sale, and they'll be glad to autograph it for you at the conference. But freeflow.org is the website. We actually have sold out the hotel. There are a lot of hotels nearby and plenty of opportunities to stay very close to the venue, but that's at the DoubleTree near the airport in Orlando, and it's freeflow.org, freeflo.org.
Well, I'm accustomed to living out of my car, so I can do that for 2 days. As long as you're on the line with us. Any questions, comments, or insults for Brandon?
No, I think what he's doing is really fantastic, and I think Florida Citizens for Science is an organization that needs more support. I see the levels of support of organizations around the state, and I think there needs to be a lot more weight thrown behind Florida Citizens for Science, and I think we're finally realizing now, hopefully before it's too late, that the youth in science education is really under attack right now. So I want to applaud Brandon for his work, and we always try to include him and his activism, and we actually were working a little bit together on lobbying for some of these issues up in Tallahassee this year. So he's definitely a partner in crime when it comes to these issues about education.
One of the things that you learn early on as an atheist is that your people of the opposing opinions seem to have probably 1,000 times the resources that you do. So it's not unusual to be a massive underdog in any discussion because they have $1 trillion and we're trying to get $2 to insult an atheist.
Yeah. We can't even agree on that.
Yeah, right.
From the local level to the national level, the disparity is tremendous, and it's reflected not only in the number of religious adherents versus non-religious adherents, but the focus of these organizations is laser sharp, and they work well with other groups, and we're learning from that. We need to work well with our allies in organizations. All kinds of secular organizations and atheist organizations can work together on these issues, and that intersectionality of our activism is what's going to take us a long way. So we need to make sure that we're not alienating ourselves at the wrong times from the right crowds that may be religious but have the same interests in mind, whether that's Americans United or Planned Parenthood or any other group that's got religious and non-religious people involved.
Good point. Yes.
You want to talk about lawsuits?
But first I just wanted to say one brief thing. David, I got the news that you all won the Brevard County lawsuit, and against the county commission for excluding atheists in the invocations, and I want to congratulate you on that.
It's a dribble glass.
Thank you. This has been a hard fight, which
Yes.
started, as you well know, well before 2014. I got inspired by you guys, and I've credited you a few times for the activism that I started back in 2010 in Tampa and Cape Coral and other places where Atheists of Florida got us excited about this issue. So we're certainly not out of the woods yet, and I would not be surprised if there were an appeal. But yeah, we won in the 11th Circuit, and it looks promising to complete this level. And if they appeal, we'll see how that goes. But I say bring it on. I think we've got the law on our side.
Absolutely.
I'm always impressed by the county commissioners or whatever who are willing to spend huge resources and energy. It's not their resources and it's not their energy to defend, say, prayer in public. On the other hand, not one of them wants to sell everything that they hast and give it to the poor, and I haven't encountered any of them who thought they ought to make themselves into a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven's sake. So the point is that they can all seem to be heroic at someone else's expense.
Yeah, well, you know, the settlement, which will involve certainly attorney fees, will be a very responsible way to spend the county's money to keep church and state separate.
Right.
If they don't know how to spend it, we'll send it for them.
Good. Yes. And with that, I'd like to segue into the lawsuits that a number of county school boards have joined together to take against the new law that says they have to give their money to charter schools, whether the charter schools need it or not, for construction.
The most recent board to join is Pinellas County,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yes. And so what we see is this effort to fund charter schools with public dollars without holding them accountable for their curriculum or even the structures that they use for these buildings. And they can just shut the thing down at any time. To me, it seems like it's an effort to really sacrifice education in order to privatize the whole system under the disguise of providing a superior education in spite of a complete lack of any evidence of that. I mean, it's like a what do you call it? An urban legend that private schools or charter schools always provide a better education. But of course, that's because they can cherry pick their students. And let's face it, students whose families can afford $10,000 or $15,000 annual fee for
Tuition.
For tuition are likely going to be upper middle class or upper class family. Yeah, exactly. Certainly. Come from better backgrounds and
well, now the
be able
charter schools, the students don't have to pay anything to go to. Is that not correct, Brandon?
Right, but just a second.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Sorry.
I was just saying that's why you've
the
got
charter school's a little bit different from the private school.
Right.
But that's why this this impression that any kind of a private school provides a better education than a public school is that's what it's grounded in, and the fact that the charter school doesn't need to take on the kids of an immigrant who doesn't even speak English, but the public schools do.
Right.
So it's much more challenging for the public schools, and the idea that we would just dismantle the public school system to provide a better education system, I think, is just a smokescreen to steer some of these billions of dollars in education money into private enterprises where the first order of business is going to be the salary for the CEO and the profits for the companies that run these schools. And at the bottom of the list will be the quality of education that the students receive.
Basically, what they want to see happen is that school teachers will be spending their time indoctrinating your children in their religion. Maybe you think that's fair. I don't.
So, Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, talk to us.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jocelyn.
I was just going to say, I mean, you really have to be privileged to be able to afford to get into this so-called school choice environment, and then they want this public investment in these parochial private schools. It's unconstitutional, in my opinion, but that's where we're going with this.
Well, I thought the state Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional back when Jeb Bush tried to do it, and demonstrating their respect for law and order, he ignored the court pending the appeal and went ahead with the vouchers anyway, because he wants to push that down our throats whether we want it or not.
It says right in
Well, the
my-
charters, that whole issue, he kind of half won, half lost on that, which he wanted to 100% school choice, and by the court ruling, he wasn't able to get 100% school choice. But on the other hand, he still kept his voucher idea, and so it was kind of a win-lose for him. There are some sneaky ways. One way that we have voucher schools here is the tax scholarship thing,
Right.
in which they claim that your tax dollars are not going to private schools, but it's actually just a roundabout way. And yeah, you still are.
Yeah, what they do, for those who don't know about this, is they give a tax cut to anyone who donates to the scholarship program. So we don't collect their taxes, which is us paying for their taxes and then giving it to private schools
It's called
or private companies.
prestidigitation.
Yes.
Well, it's the same thing as subsidizing churches that don't pay property taxes.
Right.
The rest of us pay the difference.
All of this
For their
is a
service.
direct contravention of Article 1, I think Paragraph 3 of the Florida Constitution, which is the Blaine Amendment. No money, directly or indirectly, to any religious organization ever, period, by anybody who works for the state. And they violate that every day.
And we just had a charter school that shut down in the middle of the school year last year in Pinellas County and left all the students abandoned, and because of financial impropriety in the schools. And that's happened a number of times in Florida. And just as an aside to Ed's point about the schools not being better, while there are more of them who get A's, and we know why, because of their selection of students, either directly or indirectly, but there are more of them that get F's from the rating system than public schools that get F's. And the way they can't directly filter the students out, but they make it so difficult for the parents, like requiring volunteer time. Now, what single parent can afford to give volunteer time to the school?
Right.
So they make it not directly discriminatory, but indirectly.
Roundabout, yes. 441-3000 if you'd like to join the conversation or have any questions for Brandon Haught. And if you're out of the area, call us toll free at 866-826-1340. 866-826-1340. What do you got, Joe?
Well, I thought we were going to continue on with the conversation.
I
about
would
the,
like to
schools. Did you have some other topic you wanted to get into, Brandon, or?
Oh,
David?
absolutely. There's so many different issues that we're going through just this one year. We at Florida Citizens for Science can actually go for several years where there's hardly any issues at all that we're involved with. But then 1 year comes along, bam, we
It's an
suddenly have
avalanche.
a whole list of things to deal with. And so here in this program, we've talked about two laws: the religious liberties, the instructional materials. We talked about Marion County now doing their own instructional materials review. So one more thing I want to talk about is is that this year the Florida Department of Education is doing its selection of science textbooks. What happens is that just about every year the Florida Department of Education goes ahead and selects new textbooks for a subject. I think last year was history. This year it's science. And so this is an incredibly important year for us. They have a month ago, they put out a call for anybody who wants to submit an application to be an official reviewer or kind of a sort of a citizen unofficial reviewer. And so that was about a month ago, maybe a little bit more than a month ago. And so now I've been hearing back from folks saying that, yeah, I submitted my application. They either approved me or didn't approve me, and now we're just sitting to wait for the materials to be shipped to us so that we can start doing the actual review. This is a process that we have to pay very careful attention to. Earlier in the program, you guys had talked about how some of our, I guess you can say, our opposition is much more well organized and much more well funded. And I must say that there is one organization that's really come to the fore here lately. They're called the Florida Citizen Alliance.
Oh, do we want to give them any advertisement, please?
Well, I understand that, but we need to be aware of them.
Yes.
I have the same conflict because when I post something on social media, I'm like, do I really want to link to them? And I think, because I want to give them the traffic,
Right.
But
Do you
I
know
should
about
add-
Do Not Link, where you can put a reference into a site, but it won't link to them directly, so they don't get credit for visits?
Okay.
I'll send you an email about it.
Okay, that'd be wonderful. But the main thing is, I want to make people aware of what's going on. And so, you know what, I go ahead and say, yeah, let's go ahead and send the link if we need to. But the bottom line is that these folks, the Florida Citizens Alliance, when we talk about the instructional materials law from a couple minutes ago, they're the ones who wrote the law. They're the ones who recruited a lawmaker to present it to the state legislature. Wow. They're the ones who cheerleaded it all the way through the couple of months of the state legislative session to make it become a law. You talk about time and effort and money. Holy tamale! My organization, Florida Citizens for Science, I just got to say, we can't compare. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have that. We don't have people sitting around saying, "Hey, let's go to Tallahassee for a month." We can't do that. And yet somehow they are able to do it, and they succeeded. They got this law passed, and that's something I really want to emphasize as we start going into the state selection of science textbooks, that they have influence. They have the ability to do this stuff, and the only way we can possibly combat that is to come together and work together. I know I don't have time to, at the drop of a hat to go running up to Tallahassee to do something, whereas apparently they do. But if we can get more numbers, if we can get more people, and somebody can say, hey, I can do it today, or I can do it this week, that's what we need. I know David earlier said that, we need to coordinate. We need to all work together. We need to pull in a network and help each other out. Oh, my gosh, that is so incredibly important. We have got to do that. If we don't, we are going to get beaten at every turn.
Trampled.
Yeah, because they're also suing Collier County. Is that not correct?
They are based in Collier County, but don't let that fool you. Don't let that lull you to sleep, because they have affiliates. They have members of their organization who are in other counties, Lee County, Brevard County, and they have met with many successes in these, minor, but nonetheless successes in these other counties. And so we need people in Brevard County, and Lee County, and Collier County who can, push back.
But they're suing Collier County School Board, right?
Yes, they had put together a lawsuit against Collier County for, once again, it's all about school textbooks. It is one, as with any legal proceeding, it's going to take a very long time to resolve itself. And so it's kind of stalled right now, if I understand. I haven't been keeping a close eye on it, but it has not resulted in anything yet.
Okay. And just so you know, we do have several teachers who are working with us in various counties around the state who are monitoring the situation in their schools for science education and other intrusions of religion into the schools. So we are building a base for that. But it does take a lot of people to do this, because there are 67 counties and a ton of schools in each county. So
you've got that right, and that's why it takes people willing to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and take some time and effort to help out.
Right.
And I've been doing this for more than 10 years now with Florida Citizens for Science. And it seems whenever there is this big issue in the news that's making the headlines, making the news about, creationism in the schools and stuff like that, suddenly people start coming out of the woodwork saying, I want to help. But then when it's not in the news, they all disappear. And for me, that I have a passion for this topic of science education. I think you can understand that.
Yes.
You can see that. And it's frustrating to see that, other people are just like, well, on your website, can you just provide a link so I can just click on something and it'll send a letter to my local representative? And it's like, that takes more effort on my part and no effort on your part. I need you to put effort into it. I have to have you put effort into that part, or else we're not going to succeed.
Right.
So that's a struggle of you want to do something, but are you actually willing to do something?
And what are the consequences of science being watered down in America's classrooms? What are the long-term consequences for this country?
Oh, in our public schools, we're building a foundation for the future. I mean, we really are. look around you. Look at the polls that have been taken. How educated are today's adults in science? How often have you heard somebody say, well, evolution is just a theory, and
Yes.
you wanted to just, pound your head against the wall and say, oh, my gosh, you don't know anything about science.
I have a sticker on my car that says evolution is a theory, but then so is gravity.
Exactly. And so these are the things that, people don't understand. They're so easily taken in by anybody who says, evolution is only a theory, and we need to balance it with other theories.
Right.
Well, no,
I
you
think
don't
a
know
lot
anything
of
about science.
I think a lot of people
and you're
understand.
preying on other people who don't know anything about science.
I think a lot of people understand the difference between a theory and science. They just choose to ignore it because it defeats their argument.
Well, you know what? I would have to disagree with you. I think a lot of people don't know.
I
what
think a lot of
theory
them don't
is
know,
in
but,
science.
Right.
when you get guys like, what's the guy that does all the debates on creationism?
Ken Ham.
Yeah, among others. I mean, they've had it
Well, those
explained to them
folks-
hundreds
Yes,
of times, and
yes.
they might as well be talking to a brick.
That's what I was saying. Those folks are the ones preying on the other folks
Yes,
who
they
don't
are.
know.
Yeah.
And then climate change, isn't that the issue that really is going to have the most immediate?
Satan. It's all Satan.
Oh, okay, that settles that. But see, I can't get my mind around those who say that there's no evidence yet, or there's insufficient evidence to show that all this extra carbon dioxide, these billions of tons measurably increasing in the atmosphere, has no effect on the climate change, when the science seems to me to be so simple. And I'm confounded by those who say, well, it's just, there's no way to know for sure that we're having any effect on it. I sometimes wonder if it's sort of similar to, similar to the 5-step reaction to somebody being diagnosed with a terminal illness, where they go into
Anger,
denial. And bargaining and acceptance and all that stuff, because people just don't want to believe that we can have this kind of an effect, and it's happening so fast. So when these hurricanes came through our state, and the climatologist community was asked, is this the result of all this carbon dioxide we're putting in the atmosphere? The answer from the scientific community was, well, it's a little too early to know yet, because climate is something that's evaluated over a period of years. And I'm thinking to myself, they don't get their own science. Of course it's happened. It's exactly what they told us was going to happen, and it's happening now. So why don't they tell us, yeah, this is what you're going to get from this? Talk to me.
Now, let me go ahead and scare you a little bit.
All right.
This group that I told you about earlier, which I will go ahead and not name this time, they're reviewing textbooks, okay? And they reviewed a textbook that's used in Brevard County. And they had a complaint about mention of climate change in that textbook. So the textbook says something very matter-of-factly, that, to the children, hey, what climate change, you can turn off your lights and you can do this stuff that helps conserve energy. Anyway, it's basically treating climate change as a fact. And so here's the reviewer. The reviewer is complaining about what was found in the textbook. And I'm going to quote from this. Here we go. Quote, "This statement leads the child to believe that man-made global warming is a scientific fact when it is not. Man-made global warming is a hoax based only on computer models and false data, and is an injustice to the child by not teaching scientific facts. It is pure and unadulterated false propaganda." End quote. These are the folks that are reviewing textbooks that we need to counterbalance.
It's sobering. That's all I can say.
There's just no
It's a big
limit.
statement for
There's
me.
no limit.
Yes, I've never seen Ed without something to say.
There is just no limit to what they're willing to do.
Yeah,
frankly,
yeah.
But what do you see is the motive for that? Surely they see through their own nonsense, don't they, Brandon? They must know that what they're saying is wrong.
Apparently not. Now, these folks right here are not necessarily denying that there is some type of global warming. For instance, I'm going to continue on here. Quote, "Completely ignored is the fact that global warming and cooling are cyclical, occurring for millions of years, and man has no effect on that cycle." So in that statement right there, they're not saying that there is no global warming. They're saying that man has no effect on it.
Right.
So we can burn all the fossil fuels we want. Won't affect anything. It's just happening on its own. Except there's got to be a catalyst. What is putting all the extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, if not the burning of fossil fuels?
Ignorance of science.
Say it again.
Ignorance of science.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that so many people are denying this, and I'm not sure what the actual numbers are. I'm not a student of this subject, climate change as much as the nature separation. But if near a majority, if not still a majority of people actually believe in creation, it shouldn't surprise anybody that at least that many people are denying climate change.
That's true.
And so I would point that out to make sure that to kind of get your listeners to think, oh, wait a minute, maybe I do need to do something, because there are these people out here and they're being treated seriously. These are the exact same folks who got a law passed in Florida. I don't know how else to stress that. These are the folks who got a law passed in Florida.
And now over here in Tampa, our utility company, TECO, is trumpeting their big solar array that they're starting to build, and their commitment to building a big 600 megawatt solar energy capability. They're only 10 years too late for doing this, and remember, they're the same mobsters that were behind Amendment 1, backing it with millions of dollars, trying to smother solar energy in the state. And now that they've failed, they're going to put up a few solar panels and tell us, gee, aren't we great? We're giving you clean air and clean energy, and where were you when we needed you, right?
Well, they didn't fail. They got the good one knocked off the ballot by confusing us with their amendment. And it didn't matter if theirs passed or not. Theirs didn't mean anything at all. The one that got knocked off was due to their activism. So I wouldn't call that a failure. They were pretty effective in confusing the voters.
I mean, I see them as the biggest adversary to the people, right? Is these corporations who only care about their profits. They care nothing about the consequences of their actions and how it affects the people that need to live here and breathe the poison air and deal with the level 5 hurricanes. But anyway, we're running out of time. We're down to our last couple of minutes. So, Brandon, if you'd like to give us any final thoughts and remind us again about free flow.
I just want to encourage people to do something. Check out our website, our Facebook, our Twitter, Florida.
Come to Free Flow.
Science. And of course, I'm going to do a little self-promotion. My book, Going Ape, Florida's Battles Over Evolution in Florida, published by the University of Press of Florida. A very engaging read. It's not some boring snooze fest academic thing. It's a very engaging read, and I would encourage you to check that out if you can. But primarily, I want people to take action. I hope I scared somebody. I mean, sincerely, it's Halloween month, right? It's time to scare people and to realize that they need to take action to combat those folks who are taking action against what we understand and believe.
Thank you, Brandon. Tell your worst enemies about our program, the Atheist Forum, the voice of atheism in Florida. And remember, our website, AFF, is at talk.aof.ngo. And I hope you'll join us again next week here on the Atheist Forum. Now, along with Judy Adkins and Joe Reinhardt, I'm Ed Golly, reminding you, if the story seems just a little too implausible to be true, don't believe it just because somebody wrote it down.
Make them prove it.